Nee, nicht bloß. Nicht bloß. Das ist also, das gesagt nicht.
Ja, weil wenn du schwätzt, dir nicht. Ja.
Also, das hat genug.
Keine Ahnung. Mich gehst denke ich auf den
Ich kann nicht.
YouTube. Hallo, hallo, hallo. 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 Ja, so. Hallo. Ja, ist aber gut. So. Hallo, hallo. Ja, aber hier ist die gut. Hallo. Hallo.
Sensibilität regeln oder
Nee. Hallo? Hallo? Hallo, hallo? Hallo, hallo, hallo? Ich weiß ja nicht, wer hat den Raschwärts? Nee, übersetzer. Hallo, hallo? Hallo, Jonathan. Hallo, hallo? Hallo, hallo? Was noch los?
so mal ein Test.
Test, Test. Test. Test, Test. Test, Test, Test. Test. Ich freue den Thierry soll auf den Computer gehen. Auf YouTube oder da gehen. Hey.
Nee, also schade. Der Punkt, der muss von nur das Stream nach dem Mal haben. Dann erst der Rauschen am Hintergrund.
Ja, da war ich froh, ich habe den Dingen auf den Thierry, auf den der läuft. Kann ich mal. Auf was findet den Thierry auf YouTube?
LHCE,
ja?
Okay.
Ja, soll ich das bei mir stellen? Kannst du auf YouTube gehen? An LHCE eigentlich zu gucken, ob der Ton gut ist. Der YouTube-Stream von Lisse. Wir sind gerade live, ich muss gucken, ob der Ton gut ist. Ja. Wir müssen direkt die nächste sehen, ne? Normalerweise.
Also
Steht live in dem Video irgendwo, ne? Mal was beim Dingen. Chris. Ah, hast du just remise Diplom?
Nee. Ist normalerweise MEP Christophe Hansen.
LP Christophe Hansen müsst du stehen. MEP Christophe Hansen. MEP Christophe Hansen. Was ist fort? Hallo, hallo, hallo? Ja, ist nicht. Okay, weil ich... Hallo, hallo, hallo? Das ist gut? Ja, das weiter dran.
Okay, ich kann meine Maske aber austun. Nein, ist nicht? Okay. Schon gerade einen Test gemacht. Plus. Okay. wir schon.
Voilà, dann wäre es leider fast.
Ja. Okay, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. As I can see, there is a kind of animation. There will be an exciting exchange. I wish you welcome to the second edition of the events, the Erasmus Days, which will be held here in Hubert-Clément High Schools. And we had a nice flash mob this morning here at our school. For the second part, I'm very happy to have here on my side Mr. Hansen, and to him that I'm glad that he had find the time to be here between two sessions, European sessions, to find the way here to our high school and to be able to seek for an exchange with you and to give you the opportunity to ask questions about what you think of Europe, and I'm very glad also and to have our partner schools who can follow us through the camera classes from Slovakia, Austria, and Denmark, and Poland, which are connected. So you are a European public who can be here this afternoon and ask questions. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Porchon from the Maison de l'Europe, and he will be the moderator to keep an order and a structure in the discussions. Okay? As you said, you don't like to look from above, so please feel comfortable and maybe. Thank you very much, Mr. Theis. Okay, is that fine with the camera? If we stand here? Okay, indeed, my duty today is to animate the debates, but please, I don't want to be alone to speak, so feel free to ask questions, and ideally you we had last time not the opportunity to give you the chance to put questions, but we do our best to answer most of your questions. And you have mentioned beforehand a few topics, a message from my part to the pupils.
Students I wrote it down in Chilina, in Slovakia, in Starbrecht, in the Netherlands, in Wien, in Österreich, I think my pronunciation now is horrible, in Baxwa, I suppose, in the region of Copenhagen, in Denmark, and Thessaloniki, in Greece. Ask your questions in the chat, and we'll be delighted to take them too. So please get involved, even though you're not sitting here with us. But please get involved by asking your questions verbally.
I'm going to continue in Luxembourgish because we have a translator. Thank you for the English translation. Big thank you to Christophe Hansen. As you know, he made a way. He came from Brussels today to Luxembourg. Shortly. Okay, we say you. It's important not only to be present in the meetings in Brussels, but also to represent those who elected us. And this is a big part of the work, to know what is on field, what are the problems, and what can we do to improve, and to discuss that in Brussels. I can say that I go twice a week to Brussels. Depending on where it is, I can go by train, but if it's in cities, by car, because it's easier from time point of view. We started at 8 from Brussels, and after this meeting I have to go back to Brussels because I have a commission from the international negotiation, and I have a time dedicated to represent my party. I will stay to that point briefly because I had a point in my mind. We had one event once in this Luxembourg city, and you were also there 2 years ago. There was an audition from our commissioner who wanted to be elected, and there was a big speech to be elected for that position. And you woke up very early at 5, 5:15, and it was nice. We organized events with deputies. We worked together with the commission, and I can mention Christophe, but other MEPs. It's nice to see that they are available and call for you too if you have ideas and you want to be involved. You have here Christophe and MEP who are very receptive. And we haven't done that yet. I will introduce Christophe. Christophe, you are since 2018 member of the European Parliament. 2018, and after you followed Viviane Reding, you've been elected, and you're very active within the Brexit context. You are a reporter, which means the representative from the European Parliament who negotiate the Brexit contract with the United Kingdom. So you dealt with these topics. You had also important directives like drinkable water directive, there's something to do with foreign intervention. We have an inner market as companies, European companies. You have work freely in another European country, but there are companies which are not from the European. Können Sie aber ein bisschen mehr los an mir hart schwätzen?
Okay,
Pardon.
Ich frage dann, was mir gut an, ja, also, das war noch wichtig, dass Sie am Ausland.
It's important to understand as
bei der Geschichte,
in this context there are companies which are supported by governments like China, and Christophe is involved in that, and he has to see how can they have access to our market, and it has something to do with competition. This, and you are also involved in environment topics. Christophe is chief coordinator of the Population Party, the biggest party in the European Parliament, and we have 6 members from the CSV, which is the European People's Party, Christians, Democrats. I know that we have 8 pupils here who have the European option. Can you please raise your hands? If that's fine with you, I would ask you to introduce, and the others should take part in this exercise. Please give me your name, and in 2 sentences, please tell us what you would like to hear from that exchange and take with you. Hello, I'm Katrin Göder. I'm interested in climate change topic, Fridays for Future. I would like to learn more about European Parliament and what the European Parliament, what it thinks about the Fridays for Future, and if it's important, and consider that topic. I repeat, Katrin, it's important, is interested in climate change issues, and would like to know the complaints, how the complaints from Fridays for Future are dealt with. I'm Felix Peters. I'm interested in economy outside the European Union. What you would like to know from Christophe? How does it look like with the Brexit in future? What at the European level is interested in European economic issues, and Brexit, and how it will evolve in the future. You raised your hand too on the yeah. Maybe we can start with these questions. No, let's collect. I'm Davies, and what I'm asking myself, there are EU skepticism from different countries. England with Brexit, how this is, how you deal with that issue, how you work on that at the European Parliament. Davis is interested in EU skepticism in some countries, which is higher in other countries than in Luxembourg, and what the European Parliament is dealing with that issue. You're also at the European section. Dylan, my name is Dylan. I'm interested in what you are doing on a daily basis at European level. What are your duties? Because a lot of people think that they do not a lot actually for what they are paid. Let's get started with that question. Are we aware that he is doing a lot of things with his car, but what else is he doing? Are they working a lot, or do they just sit there? And my name is Daniel. I'm interested in politics, external politics. I would like to know today is how the European Parliament is functioning. What are its functions? Outside politics, Brexit, EU skepticism, relationships with different countries, China, Russia. Danny is interested. Danny is interested in the functioning of the European Parliament, external relationships with other actors like China, Russia, etc. Who else? My name is Amy. I'm interested a lot in climate change, and I would like to know what the European Parliament is doing in favor of finding solutions and the obligations of the within the framework is how the European Parliament is functioning. Amy is your name. Amy is interested in climate change issues like Catherine, and what are the obligations of the European Parliament as a European institution. I'm Jan. I'm interested, and I would like to know is what are the criteria to be a member of the European Union, like, for example, Turkey. Yes, we know. What are the criteria to be a member of the European Union? I'm Paul, and I would like to know what a European deputy is doing on a daily basis. Paul would like to know what are the criteria to be a member of the European Union, like Jan, and the day-to-day tasks. So what are your day-to-day tasks? I would like to ask, what is a lot? How many hours do you think is a lot? It's more than a normal, you mean you're more than 40 hours per week? Okay, so yes, I'm above. It's very clear. It depends. You can go to European Parliament because as soon as you're elected, you can use your mandate to do something, or you do nothing from that, but you can use it. And I'm the speaker of our fraction of party for international trade. I'm also in charge of the agreement Brexit to get it through the parliament. You can reach that only if you work, otherwise it's impossible. This is very clear. How does a normal week look like? Well, during Corona crisis, we had to do a lot from home, video conferences. But in normal times, we have sessions from Monday to Thursday afternoon, and Friday is the day during which you have less sessions. Through the Corona situation, pandemic situation, there were not enough rooms equipped with material. So in practice, Monday morning you started at 8 until Friday 6, 7 in the evening. Our work, normally the meetings start at 8 until 6:30. This is a normal day, but you have to, of course, prepare for these meetings beforehand. And on average, in a day of 12 hours, this is a normal day. 3 nights we are in Strasbourg. 3 times we work in Brussels, 3 times in Strasbourg, in plenary sessions. This is what is provided for in laws, and it can be possible to be represented in oral meetings. If you are in charge of a specific file, you have 1 minute for that. So sometimes you can speak at 11:30, so the days are quite long, and it's very time and energy consuming, and have to drive by car or by train. You have to add that to my work time. This is one part of the official sessions, and apart from that, I have other obligations. We are active in associations, have party-linked obligations, and this is quite supportive to get everything done. And if you have one wife and with 2 kids, this is a big challenge. We have at the European elections, when we put the list on, and my colleagues from the chamber came to me and said, "Oh, three days to Brussels, that's easy." And I showed them the calendar, the schedule. It's twice what they have at the chamber in Luxembourg. That's what I have heard from my colleagues from the chamber. And if you have responsibilities for the fraction, the party, you have to coordinate everything, have 22 deputies from 19 countries, and to get everybody on one line concerning trade from Luxembourg. In Luxembourg, they speak in Luxembourgish, but sometimes you have to speak Spanish, English, German with other people. But you want to have had such a position, you have more to do than an average deputy. Let's say the comparison. Have obligations for your party. Okay, as General Secretary of the CSV. That is time consuming, at least a few hours more. But let's stay at Luxembourg level, European Parliament. Some ask how are these institutions functioning, and there are big differences. The first one, the language. The chamber deputies speak only Luxembourgish. Maybe there is sometimes an expert that speaks another language, but the discussions are in Luxembourg. Do you know how many languages are used at the European Union? Official languages. Guess, you have 27 member states. How many languages do we use officially? 27, I think, around 25. I said, at the back, give a figure. How many official EU languages exist? 3. A little bit more. 2 is not totally wrong and in different contexts. 13, a little bit more. 16. You're very close. 22. 30. No, 24. Is Luxembourgish an official language? It's important for our guests to know, is Luxembourgish an official language of the European Union? Who thinks it is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the other ones think that it's not an official language. No. So, Luxembourg. Okay, hello. No, it's not. Danish, Gaelish, Maltese. less people than Luxembourg people speak that language, but it's recognized, it's an official, and more people speak Luxembourgish, Catalan. It's not an official language either. It has something to do with Spanish politics. Another question, just to know, Luxembourg, you have an official administration language, Luxembourgish, German, and French. It's an official language of the country, but not at the European level, because it was one of the six founding members. And the Luxembourg people at the time spoke French and German. And those who were present were the translators of the European Union, because we were flexible in languages in comparison to our neighboring countries. I must say that at the European Parliament, most deputies speak their own language, but most master the English language. And you have sometimes, well, people who never had to use English in practice. When you started at this 70s or 60s, was not that easy to speak and to learn English. And for us, it's not a problem to make mistakes in a language, because it's not our mother tongue. European Parliament, what language or what languages do you speak? The meetings in which I share, I speak English, because with most colleagues, English is the most used language, and the most texts are translated in other languages. So English is the official text. So on that basis, you speak in that language with your colleagues. It's the easiest way to communicate. I look at the subject, and this is a big problem. Our journalists in Luxembourg, they follow everything what's going on here on the national level, but at the European scene, they follow less what's going on. So I try sometimes in German or in French, and RTL, sometimes taken extracts. This is one of our big challenges, but I'm more comfortable to speak Luxembourgish than in other languages. But in plenary sessions, when you have 1 minute, you have to be very clear, and you get prepared in advance, even if sometimes the sentences are quite different. And I send that to the translator to European Parliament, so they have that as a basis, because otherwise the risk is high if you speak very rapidly, and within 1 minute you can use 144 words in French. You can speak faster than in German, for example. You have to plan that in advance, and I send a draft test to the translator so that they can follow, because it goes the quite rapid rhythm. As concerned translators, as regards the journalists, when you look at the news, the channels have correspondents in other countries. We have 2 correspondents at Bristol, yes, permanent correspondent. Daniel Weber from Radio 107, and one from the Luxembourg Wort. It's not a lot when comparison to other countries, so it's a big challenge and to reach the public opinion with European topics, and challenge for us as well. We said that we can speak in 24 languages. Let's say I'm a deputy and I could speak in Maltese. These speeches, are they translated simultaneously in other languages? What do you think? No, I don't think so. Catherine, don't think. doesn't think that you're listening to your European deputy and you would like to have your speech translated, and then you take the German channel. How do you have an idea how it works so that they can listen to the German language? And that's why I said in other countries the three languages are important. There are three main languages. Mainly at the European Parliament, you cannot expect from each translator to cover all the languages. Maltese is translated into English, and from the English you translate into the German. French is also one of the main languages, so they listen to the English, French, or German translation to translate it into the other. Sometimes you make a joke and you can see that they laugh. It takes time before the joke reaches everybody because it's translated and it takes a bit time. It's quite interesting to see. There have been a lot of questions about the functioning of the European Parliament. When we compare to with a national parliament, how is the Luxembourg Parliament composed of 60 deputies? They have a coalition and there's a majority of 31, so very short as against 29. Is there a majority at the European Parliament? In Luxembourg you have 3 parties and the government is composed of members from these 3 parties. At the European Union, do you have a system like this, or is it different, do you think? I ask you. I think I've seen a picture with different colors representing different parties at the European Parliament. Yes, there are different party groups. Christophe and Isabel Wismar are members of the European People's Party, CSD, Républicain in France, etc. But is there a majority? An executive board of the government is depending on that European Parliament. Briefly, the answer is no, and that's what is exciting. Maybe I can provide a few details. There's an informal coalition from the 3 parties, socialists and liberals, because together they made an agreement. They had the best results during the elections, and that's why we have a big representation at the European Parliament. The European Commission is like the European government, and we have Ursula von der Leyen, head of the European Commission, and with a whole team we have an informal von der Leyen coalition, even if it's quite tight and does not work totally like that. This is why this coalition was created. When we talk about transportation, environment, we have various groups. We have countries from the north and from the south of Europe, and they have different problems. I'll give you an example. Labor right. The commissioner made a proposal specific. Nicolas Schmidt is the Luxembourg EU commissioner who is in charge of the social aspects, and they made a proposal for the minimum labor wage. And this is, in Luxembourg, what most parties have in their programs, but we have countries like Sweden do not have a minimum wage. They have collective agreements which are better for the workers than the minimum wage, and they are against the minimum wage, even if in the fractions there. So there are differences depending on what country we come. You have to find your own majority. Let's stay to that point in each file. You have to find a new majority. Let's go back to the example of the chamber. 31 as against 29. If you have one national deputy from these 31 does not vote for or bring it to the chamber, the government does not have a majority anymore. Means I ask the European politicians of your function as General Secretary, you said before, it's important in a democracy when you have the mandate as deputy is free. You can do nothing or be committed a lot, or you have a duty vis-à-vis to the sovereign voters. What is the difference in your marche de manœuvre as a deputy and as a politician? How could you compare? As a deputy, stay at home and do nothing. That does not exist, because at European Parliament, if you don't have attend minimum sessions, meetings, you don't, so you don't get your salary or less if you do not attend all the sessions. And if you compare that in Brussels, those who can make laws are the European Commissions. The European Parliament do not have that right to create laws, though the governments can make a draft law, and at the chamber the deputy can make a proposal for a law, and that initiative law in Luxembourg, it's quite frustrating, because in practice a proposal is made, the government drafts a law, and the party says, okay, I would like to change that and that point. Most of the times they are not accepted, because in the coalition, they are not member of the coalition of the government, and at the European Parliament is different. We have all interest that the text includes most fractions, so we can have a majority in plenary sessions, and if within fractions parties you have differences. Some are more for climate, others are from Sweden or Spain, so there are differences. What's important is the thing. If you're a reporter for an important file, you have to take care that you convince most people to take that path. Automatically, you have to work with other parties together, and this is the diversity and the idea that which I like more than at the chamber. Luxembourg has 6 European deputies from the various 5 parties. Wait. Am I wrong when I say that you are closer than European deputies than people from your own party? Marc Angel from the Socialists. In general, you get along better, yes, than with people from your own party. Among the 6 members, we have a regular exchange So, irrespective of the parties, if there is an important file, and I can ask him, what are you doing within that file? And then we try, if I have one point and I say, we need your fraction to work with us. So I talk to him, and most of the times it works with Mark Angel. The same with, for example, with environmental issues. We do not agree all the times with each other. And Cliff Metz calls me, and she can see how our list looks like, voting list, even if it's not the same as we would have as a CSV party list. That's what I try. So the interest we have in that file, that works well. The European Parliament, you cannot just work with your party because you will never reach the majority you need. This is what I like. I will ask those who had questions about the composition and the relationship with the daily work. Paul and Dylan and Danny. Something about Dylan and Paul. As regards these questions, and also at the different schools, do you have questions about the functioning and the daily work of a European deputy? Is everything clear? Maybe briefly I could summarize a few things about the functioning of the European Union. As you know, in Luxembourg, and this has also something to do with EU skepticism, when something is not working, this is Brussels. This is a bad excuse, because who is Brussels? From Luxembourg is our commissioner, 6 EU deputy members, and our ministers. These institutions work together. European Commission, which is the European government, if the member states doesn't like that expression, because they have the monopoly to make law proposals. If you want something happening in climate change, they have to make the proposal and have something on the table. And the co-legislators, those who were the European Parliament and the ministers, the Council ministers, and internally, and the European Commission will receive that test, and the reporter is defined, and within that commission we have a text which is voted for, and then it goes to the plenary body. And when the text is voted, there are various steps. There are amendments which can be made. The text is getting improved, and then at the plenary session, when it's voted, this is our mandate with the governments, with the to negotiate with the council. Interrupt you, sorry. When you talk to a European deputy, and we will talk about climate, we would like, but the council. So let's summarize that. The European Parliament want more integration, more cooperation with the member states in different files, and more strict measures than one than another. And the national governments take the breaks. And this system you don't have in Luxembourg. You have only the chamber. In the USA you have that. You have the Senate, House of Representatives, and it's similar in French. You have the Sénat, Assemblée Nationale. And I don't know for your countries are listening to us, but we have two bodies have to agree with each other. And sometimes there are problems. I would not say that generally the European Parliament, depending on the fights, for example, climate issues, the European Parliament is more progressive because the European Parliament will not have to implement that at national level. We draft laws, and most happening here is the implementation into national laws, and it are less ambitious because they will have to implement that. Their climate targets, renewable energies, and pay for that. The European Parliament, and Catherine wanted to talk about that, and Amy. What wants the European Parliament that the Council doesn't want as regards climate issues? The Council, pact for 55. Why 55? We have as an objective, European 20 and up to 2030, 50% less carbohydrates. There are other member states at the Council and Minister Council say that it's far too much and will never reach that because they depend. Poland, for example, is using coal, and the electricity depends on coal, and in other countries too. Even in Luxembourg, we are depending on electricity importations from foreign countries, and we have also coal energy in our electricity here in Luxembourg, minus 50%. As Parliament, we agree with that, but ministers are not sure. But the Commission's objective is minus 50%. There are 8 laws which the Commission has put on the table. ArcelorMittal and the various industries, they produce metal, and while heating, CO2 are issued, and during the chemical process there are also CO2 emissions. So for each ton produced, CO2 emissions, they have to pay a price for that. So the price will raise and higher, and we have to ask competition questions. It's unfair to say that the companies in Luxembourg and Europe have to pay for the CO2 emissions. There are competitors from China, Turkey, where there is no carbon price, and they don't have to pay that carbon price, and this makes this industry uncompetitive. Our industry, the global companies that produce not only in corn, yes, they will invest in Turkey, north of Africa, and this is not what we want, because they will produce the same CO2 emissions there, and this is why we have a system, proposed a system of balance. When 1 ton of metal comes from China, this is negotiated at the stock exchange, so that we can have a level playing field. These are the few elements. We have 33% of the emissions at the European Union. Through the buildings, you have to heat the buildings or freeze in other buildings. This is 1/3 of the emissions in buildings. So it's very expensive to renovate everything. Each new house which is built is a passive house. You don't need some produce more energy than consuming it. Let's take the Luxembourg country. You have old buildings which you cannot isolate like the new buildings, and there you have different minds because strict rules cost money. And this is what we call a social reform, which will have to help those who in the fight against climate change are the dummiest, considers the dummiest, cannot afford that. And we have some of these proposals. Catherine, you talked about Fridays for Futures, and if I understood you well, I have the impression that you have the feeling that politics, broad meaning, doesn't take Fridays for Future seriously. My question was if that topic, if the voices of those going on the street is heard, if their requests are taken into consideration. Yes, clearly. The question was how the voices of the streets are taken into consideration, are debated in the European Parliament. You have the Commission and the Council as well, but at the European Parliament we are those who are directly elected to represent Luxembourg and other countries in Brussels. It's an evidence for me. It's obvious with all the representatives we have to talk with, because otherwise because it's part of our mission. And I have to look at there are a lot of ideas I share and others how we can, considering what we have now, because we cannot just destroy all the houses and build new ones. We cannot make that. We want to reach that goal, and we have a climate neutrality until 2050, and this has been decided at the European Parliament. Greta Thunberg was invited twice to the European Parliament, and I was there because I'm a member of that commission, and we were quite surprised and shocked. Some were just there to take a picture with her, which was not very clever, but we have a common target, climate neutrality. We have to find the right process and how we will reach that. There are a lot of discussions until that. Climate change. Catherine, Amy wants to talk about that. Do you have a question, or can we continue about climate change? Davis? Dylan? Sorry. I'd like to ask for those countries which disagree to have more strict measures. You have to explain something about that. At the European Union, there are various decision-making models. As regards taxes, for example, the 27 members have to agree and reach unanimity. As regards energy, a few months ago, the taxation of energy, to take it out of the unanimity process in Luxembourg, government said that they were against that. The problem is sometimes when we need unanimous vote, then it's very, very difficult to continue. And we have to talk about that unanimity process, talk about fair rules, because when we can block, because Luxembourg blocks, for example, very often the tax issues, we will never bring this any further. Fit for 55, the most proposals do not require unanimity. You need a majority. I will not go too much into detail, but at the council they have to agree with that. There's a big majority required, but not unanimity, and this is important so that we can continue. Let's stay at the example of Poland, because it's the country wanted to be at the climate pact agreement. They are very dependent on coal industry, coal energy. Maybe you can explain how you can take their claims into consideration. There are various things we have to consider. First of all, the European Social Fund for the climate issue. You have to help the weaker to guarantee them a fair energy price. Secondly, we talked about the negotiation of the emissions in the industry, reaching CO2 emissions. You collect money in a fund, and with this money you can invest in new technologies, promote research to bring new technologies in the market and for an energy transition. These are a few of the elements we can bring. Because I can see we have questions from Slovakia.
Do members of the European Parliament deal or read resolutions from model European Parliament sessions, conducted at the model European Parliament?
Do you follow that a little bit? Yes. We have a few organized in Luxembourg, and we are invited. We received a resolution, and we discussed with them, yes, very clearly. Yes, it's very important, first of all, that the young European people think of subjects, and they are not conscious all the time of the constraints or why it's not going any further. It's important. That's why it's important to discuss with them. And several times, together with Jonathan at the information office, we organized that. And what is also important, I think that when Jonathan worked with other high schools, it's a conference for the European future. It's a call for all the citizens to take part in that. This is what on what we have to work, and Jonathan maybe can provide a few examples how we can reach at the participative aspects. It's easy to say, okay, they do that wrong, but we have to come and say, and this is why the conference for European future is important. Let's talk also about EU skepticism. Briefly, Conférence pour l'avenir de l'Europe, Conference for the European Future. Have you ever heard of that? No. You? Felix, yes, a bit. Not much. What have you heard? It's good that at least one that conference will be held. Yes, that's not wrong. Briefly, it's from May 2021 till 2022. There's a list of subjects, and all those which have been listed, part of them are on a platform of the Conference for European Future. And I would not recommend that, but it's an option. You can go to the website and take a few time and write down what is important for you. You have to be very motivated and committed to take time to do that. What else you can do, and what this is more exciting, according to me, it's two things. I take one example of one pupil, LHCE high school, came to me. I would like to be committed. I would like to do something within the context of this conference. I said, okay, what are you interested in? She gave me as an answer climate change, environment, and we thought of that, and plastic. We have to get rid of the plastic. There is one directive, EU, which is against the plastic. So we took that as a topic, kill the plastic. And she'll find other fighters working on that topic at her high school, getting prepared with experts to get some knowledge. And we helped her to get in contact, in touch with other experts. And so we had a discussion with Mr. Hansen and Mas. These are our two deputies who are most involved in this subject. So plastic. What is interesting? You can fill in documents. Me, a pupil from the LHCE, organized that event. How many people attended, and this is what we concluded from that event. And this is our complaints. So this had more weight. And in particular, when you are clever, and for example, when the newspapers, it's shown on TV, this is a clever way but we have not the opportunity to get too much into detail. But if you are inspired, your professors, your teachers are inspired. I'm looking at the camera. If you have ideas,
representation of the European Commission to work on certain topics and to invite people like members of the European Parliament or for Luxembourg.
And for Luxembourg, as I said, if you have ideas, you are motivated, you can organize that within any framework, work 5, organize that in a classroom, in context like this one. This is a nice exercise, and I use that as a transition to the topic EU skepticism. What will come for the plenary session with a representative from the civil society, citizens that are concerned, are working on that topic, that what is on this platform will be taken into consideration. We don't know what will result from that, what is exciting. We're working with him, we invite him in an event. We can organize another one 1 year later and see, okay, we had that conference about European future. What was the conclusion? And you are the sovereign people, and so he is responsible for you, and he has a duty vis-a-vis you. This is the first file I worked on. I started 2018 when Vivian Redin commissioner and the national came back to national policy and have only a few months to work on this file. I started on September 2018. In summer, I took other files very seriously too, and I worked on that. The online system you have in the computer system, and you can amend some things. And I have one problem. It was on the second day of my mandate, I didn't have access to be able to make these changes. I tried several things and they were quite surprised that I wanted to start as from my second day of office. Plastic, plastic that you use, and Commission made a study that 70% of the plastic in oceans are from the products you use most. It was funny because I put most things on my paper and I gave that to the secretary, and they were not prepared for that. And this was apparently a record because nobody was so fast. It's a topic which is important in Luxembourg, and which at the European Union was considered in different ways. In the past, you used to bought things at the supermarket, and you had plastic bags for nothing. And the consequence in 2015 in Luxembourg, we were like pioneers because we took out these plastic bags from the market. One Luxembourg citizen only bought 20 bags per year. In Slovakia, 450 bags bought. 450 because they were free. No, not bought, they used because they were free. And there are a lot of differences at the European level, and we have to get things closer. The EU skepticism, they say often in Brussels they try to impose something on us. If everybody's looking only as okay, if you want to talk about EU skepticism in relation to that. How do you define skepticism? What is for you EU skepticism? Various countries, parties from different countries are EU skeptical, like England, which how do we come to that EU skepticism, and how can we what are for you, according to you, what are the arguments of those who are EU skepticists? What are the anti-EU arguments? As far as I know, for the Brexit, there was a financial reason. They wanted to be independent. Are there other reactions, explanations? How they define EU skepticism, EU politics, arguments? And spontaneously in the chat. I think what is important is to say how our communication has changed over the 20 last years. When you look at the year 2000, Facebook was just created. All the social media came afterwards. Radio, TV, newspapers were the communication means, and TV and newspapers were, and radio as well. We notice they have to change their business model because it's a lot online and have to sell their subscriptions, work with other titles. And you know, when you go to TikTok, Instagram, you just stay there if you see something that makes you curious. Otherwise, you just switch. The consumption of the communication has changed a lot over serious media. The information, which is not political, is not always true. Sometimes, while with lies, it's easier to make politics, and so it's not easy to find out what is better for a country. You come with an argument. We would like to take back our control. They had a commissioner, a minister. They were present at the negotiations, and they were one of the biggest member states. They had the biggest words to speak, and they said as an argument that there is the Court of Justice, the European Court of Justice above us, and is totalitarianism and is an extreme politics. And Jan, you talked about that, and you have criteria, and the British people signed that, and then after that they decided to be against it. You said that Great Britain used to be one of the biggest member states. What happens what are the consequences of the Brexit to the European Parliament? The first consequence is those deputies are no longer there, so the number of deputies decreased, and over the 2-3 last years, most of the subjects concerned the Brexit. Normally, we prefer having a wedding when a new member state is entering to the European Union, and divorce, unfortunately, is not the same. Well, discussed at the same level. I don't know if you followed everything, but we proposed a few options. The British people, like North Ireland, was one of the biggest major points. Didn't want to have a physical barrier. I don't want to go too much into detail. Don't want to control the barriers, but the condition is that you have the borders from a geographical point of view. North Ireland belongs to the United Kingdom. De facto exit, but Republic of Ireland, which belongs to the same island, is a member of the EU, and between them there is no physical border, because at the end of the 80s there was a civil war, bombs shot on the streets. This is something we forget. This is the main reason why we created the European Union, because of peace in Europe. this kind of situation could be reinforced. The agreement, there are also protocols how we can leave these borders open when they buy products from Great Britain, from Scotland to North Ireland, and also continue to the Republic of Ireland. And British people have to control these borders, and we notice a lot of problems. They don't have enough truck drivers because a lot of come from east of Europe who used to work in that island, and there is a big lack of car drivers, and the energy prices drastically increased. Johnson said to revise the climate targets downwards. The divorce, Brexit will bring misery, and us too, especially Holland, Belgium, France, Denmark. As regards fishery, they have a lot of conflicts about they have a lot of exchanges with Great Britain, and now a lot of papers has to be signed, and now they notice that it's not as cool as we thought, and everything they have signed, they want to renegotiate in North of Ireland. So either they didn't read or they didn't understand what they signed for, but it's not nice for British people for whom Are there any questions about Brexit, EU skepticism? How does it look like with the Brexit in future? There are different scenarios. They have internal problems. Great Britain is a union of different, not countries, but populations. They're different. You have Wales, Scotland, North of Ireland, England. This is the United Kingdom. Scotland are pro-European. They would like to have a referendum to get back into the European Union, but the Johnson government wants to avoid that. Politically, this is not responsible, but they live from the confrontation with the European Union. They have to show that they are the strong ones. We seek for conflict with these dummies, these European dummies, and want to have a referendum, and the British people, British government wants to keep that unity in Ireland. Cannot see the future, but this will be a mess for a long time. And England and Wales are the two entities who were in favor. Scotland was against, and 56 were against it. Question was, how can Scotland go back to the European Union without the other entities? Is this possible? There are a lot of steps to arrive at. First, when there was a referendum already, before the Brexit referendum about the independence of Scotland, which was not in favor and it was not recognized. You do not have to forget that it's not a federal system, but you have a government in Scotland and the funding is dependent from the island. There are a lot of steps in between, and in practice, I don't think that in the decades, the following decades, this will take place. I think I'm not optimistic for the future. Those are dependent for on the negotiations and the British people. They want to vote for their own rules, and you want to build your own car and you want to sell them to the European market, has to comply with European rules. And if they have their own made cars, and they cannot sell them to the European Parliament, there's no logic behind that. The British people say the European Union costs a lot. Not a lot, because they contributed only a few. They are EU skeptical, and they had a discount, which means that they were quite good in this file. 25 minutes left. There are other questions, criteria to adhere to the European Union. Let's start with how are these criteria, membership criteria, you have to meet to enter the European Union. There are a lot of measures. For example, as regards the corruption, justice system, there are the values about. Entschuldigung, Scheren, wirklich ganz, ganz schlecht. Das ist wirklich ganz so viel anstrengend für mich. Du schwätzt schon ohne Mikro. There are a series of criteria. Independence of the justice, the freedom of media, fight against corruption. And this is a task for those who want to adhere. And when you have met this criteria, you can enter the European Union, adhere. The process of membership, the candidate is helped to meet the criteria in various domain fields. I give you the example, for example, with Turkey is a country has been in the procedure for a long time, until 2005, has developed positively, have made a lot of changes. In this respect, there was a switch with Erdogan, who you know, I'm sure, and we go back instead of going forward. And you have a European budget, and we'll put that on freeze now, the budget, because we go into the wrong direction, and we will freeze the funds because they are thought for making efforts, and we can notice that they are going backwards instead of forward. As I said that in the plenary sessions, and I call them ambassador. I have to be honest, when you go to the wrong direction, we can not do that. We have countries where it's better, like countries in ex-Yugoslavia, Balkans, because they make a lot of efforts and progress. And I'm in favor to take more countries in the process. Maybe we'll talk about that later. We have a program. We not give them perspectives. The influence of the Russia and China is very important. We have to be careful, because if we do not help them, then others will do that. Christophe, we have this challenge. We have 10 minutes. Let's stay at the membership criteria. Can pretend that we have countries that are part of the European and they will meet the criteria. The Hungary, lacks freedom of media. Republic of Czechoslovakia and other examples. I took just the most obvious ones. How do you see that development? Poland and Hungary, they protect each other. The basis, all the criteria, membership criteria had to be met. The conditions had to be fulfilled to get in, and you signed that you have to comply with them. But we noticed that in various countries, they're going backwards. The press bodies are purchased from states, and they are restricted. We had NGOs who helped refugees, and in Hungary they were guilty for having done that. And this is why we have this membership criteria, and we had that also in Malta. There was one journalist who was killed, and the premier of that time, prime minister, was involved in that crime. So the freedom of speech and of media and the independence of justice in Poland, where the judges are appointed by the government, this is something which should not be happening, something concerning. You have the High Justice decided that the right of Poland is above the European rights and laws. This goes against the right, the laws of EU. We have to put pressure on these countries. These are few things. Nobody thought at the time where the European Union was founded that one country would retreat. There was a big chaos to deal with that. Nobody believed that as long as you had a contract signed and you had the fundamental values complied with, that you would go backwards. Nobody thought of that. This is why the procedures were not adapted, but we have a new system that should allow to put pressure on these countries, on this state mechanism, so that we can put pressure on them on a financial level. We can also say that they receive funds from the European budget. We relate that to compliance with these rules. In Poland, you have regions call themselves LGBTQ free zones. There are people from these minorities that are not allowed to live there. Indeed, we have funds frozen for these regions by the European Union, so these no longer exist. Do you have questions concerning Poland, Hungary? to that topic. No, it doesn't. Okay. What are the methods used to work against that? There are a few things thought. What the first are on the financial level, you receive funds that we will freeze until the law will be complied with. And in the Council of Ministers, the member state like Hungary or Poland, if they do not comply with that, they will lose one voting right. These are the measures planned. The problem is the Council of Ministers, the majority, it requires unanimity, and Poland and Hungary in this case are in the same boat. We are against, and this is how it is. The process is blocked. The national thinking is what weakens the European Union. Very briefly, the foreign policy. We have no weight and we are not reactive. To give an example, the Luxembourg soldiers were engaged in Afghanistan, German and from the whole European Union next to the USA. And this functioned only because we cooperated with the USA. This was a promise for election that they would retreat from Afghanistan. We learned that from the media. We didn't talk to them and we had no consultation. The European Union is as an external force too weak. I mean, external policy. We need unanimous voice. We take part in a mission, and you have countries, and this is the case in other areas like defense and where we have negotiations. China, for example, is the strongest economy of the world, stronger than the European Union. We notice that it's active in Greece and elsewhere. They build train lines in southeast of Europe, and they build whole infrastructures in consideration of that countries in which they do not really agree. They are against the products produced by forced work. There is a proposal has to come. The minister, the member states who signed bilateral agreements blocked these fines because they don't want to be in a bad position with China. We do not work with one voice. We had a task force with Michel Barnier within the Brexit. He coordinated the position of the European Union, and he was the only partner. And at the external policy, we don't have that. Unfortunately, we need one voice, one coordination to talk with one voice with China. This concerns me most on economical level, political level, and if we do not manage to go more with Europe, with one voice, then this is going to be a subject of the future. It worked once that your colleague of Jean-Claude Juncker of your party had a mandate of trade, which is hard competence of the European Union, and negotiated with Mr. Schwamm in the name of the opinion union. We have 60 seconds. Is there a last question, something you want to say before leaving you? He cycles. Like, do you want to say something before he gets back to Brussels? I have the last word. I wanted to say, in normal times, I have the possibility on a regular basis to invite groups. We have a budget dedicated to that and would be interested and have colleagues in member states, in Slovakia, Denmark, Austria and Greece. We have a budget dedicated to the invitation of pupils or groups of people, and I would be glad to invite you if we manage to coordinate that with your network. Also would like to talk with my colleagues of the member states to organize something bigger. And then the situation have to develop, because I hope that we will continue next September. This is also a call for the committed professor. Organize that tomorrow morning. I have a class from Ettelbruck, and I will bicycle with them, because they will organize the conference in Glasgow, and that was last time in Madrid, and they will bicycle from Maastricht to Antwerpen. And tomorrow, Philip is a very committed bicycler and will meet there in Brussels and can show them. I think it's important to be on site and show how it looks like. Thank you for your questions, and the professors for the organization. Thank you, Mr. Thijs and school who listened to us in Slovakia, Austria, Denmark, in Holland. We forget somebody. Greece. Thank you. Thank you for translation. Wasn't an easy exercise. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. We would be happy if you come back. Euroscepticism is part. Understanding European skepticism will help go further, and it's right to be here and to provide us this message. Thank you for the moderation as well. Thank you. Good afternoon.